4, 3.
We are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and joining us as they do every single week, 9 o'clock hour on Thursdays, the MGoBlog Roundtable crew. We will start off with the intros. Man, started it all over at the blog. Our good friend Brian Cook, BC, good morning. How are you?
It's a snow day, so there are children that may
Right.
be in the background, but I'm well.
The same thing, man. It's like, yeah, we gotta deal with the kids being at home today. And Seth Fisher, how are you this morning?
My kids went to bed before they found out it was going to be a snow day, so I went to bed at 1:30 whenever that game ended, and at about 7:30 I hear ah.
Fantastic. And Craig Ross, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Seth will be happy that I finished the year 1898 yesterday for Hail to the Victors coming up.
Love 1898.
I do too. That's one of my all-time favorite years of Michigan football. And at the end, of course, was when Louis Elbel wrote the Victors after the win in Chicago against the Snake Amos Alonzo Stagg, and 12-11. And in 1899, the Victors was a part of Michigan culture, and we partied like it was 1899 ever since.
All right. It's going to be I think, a great, another great edition of the mag. Looking forward to that. I want to make sure that we get to basketball today. So we'll a broad brush the football side of things as we went in depth into the portal. But I'm just curious, over the last week, Brian, your thoughts on Michigan's portal activity, the wins, the losses. What are your big takeaways from the week that was in the transfer portal for the Maize and Blue?
I mean, the thing that I care the most about is that they kept Sprague and Guarnera. Like, other guys are replaceable, but you can't make an offensive line in the portal. And like, I charted these guys all year. I was very excited about being able to chart these guys next year. They lost Ty Haywood. They lost Strayhorn in the portal. They have pretty much a 1-for-1 replacement for Strayhorn in HKT, who I'm not going to bother trying to pronounce his name pretty much for his entire Michigan career. But like, they kept the line together, and that's my number one thing. Other than like keeping Marsh, keeping Underwood, they kept the line together. And then the wide receiver room looks like night and day from a couple years ago, and very happy about that. And then they have a secondary. They don't have a lot of depth, but I think they have a starting, 5, 6, 7 guys that I'm comfortable with. And pretty much the only things that I'm a little bit concerned about are, 1, they need a starting linebacker from somewhere. And 2, they don't really have an impact defensive tackle. But impact defensive tackles are very difficult to come by in the portal. Michigan got a couple innings eaters last year, but if they keep Pierce, they add Jonah Leia, who was announced officially just now. Like, I feel like they're in a pretty good spot, especially since this staff just came together very recently. They retained most of the guys I wanted them to retain, and they're in a good spot right now.
Seth Fisher?
Yeah, the weird thing is, like, after this whole process, right? Like, everyone goes in the portal, and we're kind of back where we were. Like, if you look at like where Michigan is right now, there's kind of a 1-for-1 replacement for a lot of the guys they lost. Obviously, the secondary, cleared out, but they brought in a lot of dudes in the secondary that might get one more if you want to count Moa as a defender. I don't like it. It's weird. This has happened with a lot of teams. We started looking at the other. Finally, the portal quieted down a little bit enough that we started looking at the other teams and what's going on with them. And everyone's doing the same kind of thing. Like, you lose, a B-level guy and replace him with a B-level guy with pretty much the same eligibility. You're kind of looking at the system. It benefited Michigan because Michigan was going to be in bad shape that they couldn't replace. But the system right now is that you can just go out and everybody's a free agent. So you can kind of just go pick out what you need, and you're going to end up kind of back where you were. I think the system's going to have to change though, because it's weird that a lot of teams are doing this without changing coaches dramatically, like Michigan did in the last minute.
Yeah.
Greg Ross.
Yeah, I think Brian's synthesis was spot on. The big deal for me is that the offensive line looks like it should be really good next year. They brought in wide receivers. They've got running backs. I think tight ends will be okay. I think you're going to see some improvement from some of the people in the tight end room. Edge on defense should be okay. I think they've got enough in the secondary. The question is exactly so. Defensive tackle, can they get by with what they have? Can they see some improvement by some of the people they have? And can you perhaps get a freshman, because they have two promising ones coming in, at least getting into the rotation? And linebacker is a big question. I mean, maybe Bowles steps up, maybe Nobbs steps up, but it would be nice in the last second if they could find a linebacker, but I don't think it doesn't look like that's happening right now, but otherwise I agree.
Chase Taylor. Everybody forgets Chase Taylor.
You're right.
What is with this?
You're right.
What is
You're
with
right.
this panel? No one can remember the one guy.
I apologize. Yes, correct.
You'll know his name this year. I went
right.
back to charting a little bit, and yeah, Chase Taylor's going to be a player, guys. I like him.
Yeah, you're gonna need him to be a player soon. Ryan's right. The linebacker position is the glaring one, and unless they can entice some guys to jump in the portal, looks like you're going to have to improve from within. And it's possible that you can have guys take some steps. That's what they're looking at from the defensive tackle perspective, assuming everything gets locked in with Trey Pierce. And then Eno Etta, who I had little hope of them being able to lure back into the fold, that has started to look a lot different. So if they can get those guys who have, and Trey Pierce, when he was healthy, I thought he was really coming on, but the problem was he wasn't healthy for a good portion of the season. And then Eno has, he has freaky athleticism. And is this the point where that athlete, natural, the God-given talent, and then just the time that it takes to grow into his body from 250 or 260 to this 315 pounder, and then learning techniques and learning the game inside, does that all come together this year? This is what I think Lou Esposito was standing on the table for. It's like, hey, there are no sure things in the portal anyway. I think my guys are going to come on. I want to realize the fruits of the labor of investing in their development. I think is going to be this year. You got to hope that's the case for Michigan guys.
It's hard to tell what you got in the defensive tackle room because they played so many redshirt seniors last year, right? You had, and those guys were fine, but you were like, I was hoping all year that a Pale would come out. You got to see Beigel a little bit, but they did recruit these guys, right? And they still have them. So you might see a Pale. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. Beigel is the same class. You might see those guys kind of take a step forward. You might get something out of Alistair Vallejo. I'm not saying true freshman is going to be Mason Graham right away, but he might be the kind of guy that you can play, especially in a pass rushing situation. And Benny Patterson was a guy that I still hear good things about him, and that's that's another dude that you brought in last year that Esposito was like, this guy's gonna be a player once he gets some weight on him. This year, maybe not, but they do have defensive tackles. It's not like 2019 where it's just like you look at this roster and you go, who's gonna play?
Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of the young guys. Who's most likely to come on a bowl prep as an indication? That's one of the things you're trying to find out. What about the guys we don't see and hear from? Pale was the guy that they mentioned. That he was, he was actually doing a really good job for the limited reps he had against Greg Crippins, and he put him down a couple times in some of the matchups in bowl prep. The question is, obviously, he hasn't played a lot. He's a young guy, and even if he plays, how many snaps? His getting his body and conditioning together over the first couple of years, that's been the case. Now, how many snaps do you need? 15? 20? Yeah. What can he really provide for you? They will need one of those guys to step forward and step up. I think he's the likeliest guy. Bowl prep is an indicator, so we'll see on that front. So still gotta get those guys. I haven't checked Twitter this morning to see, but it's Trey Pierce, it's Cam Brandt. I know it's Trey Pierce, Cam Brandt, Eno, and all of those guys were trending towards staying. Now, trending and signing are two different things, so you gotta, hope for the best as far as that's concerned. I wanted to make sure that we got over to talking about this basketball team because we didn't at all last week, and then they went out and they lost that game to Wisconsin. John Blackwell came home, had himself a game. Their guards were able to be really effective in that contest, and then they're big shooting threes. And Michigan, they said, the coaches said this, Brian, all of them, our energy level in this game wasn't what it needed to be. They really addressed that in practice, and I thought we saw the expected response last night against Washington.
I mean, I'm not really sure about coaches know more about energy levels than I do, but it did feel like Michigan was a little shocked by the 5-out stuff that Wisconsin was running. Not shocked, I guess, because they played Wake Forest, but Wake Forest put up 85 in overtime in the first game that they played against a team like this, and they have a big center, and so my initial impression of the Wisconsin game is it kind of felt like being on the flip side of the Mo Wagner event for Matt Painter. Like when Matt Painter was playing Michigan, he would go in these press conferences after getting beat by John Beelan, and he'd be just like, what am I supposed to do? I don't have any idea how you're supposed to play basketball in these circumstances. And the thing that really jumped out to me is that Wisconsin shot 56% from two, which is 20 points over what Michigan gives up in an average game. And there was an incident, kind of early in that game where Elliot Cadeau was really up on Boyd basically as soon as he crossed the half court line, and Boyd pretty smoothly just kind of got to the lane and was able to get a layup. And that's something that Elliot Cadeau can do against pretty much every team in America except 5-out teams, because Mara's going to be backing him up. But Mara got pulled out of the paint repeatedly, and the shots that Bieliauskas were getting up. I mean, he's a 29% 3-point shooter this year, but when he hit a couple and he had a couple more that were absolutely wide open, it was like, all right, well, what are we supposed to do with this? So they had a period in the second half where they were 8 of 9 from 3, and all of those shots were good shots. And so Michigan does need to figure something out tactically about playing teams like that. So it's not just an energy level thing. It's the fact that you built your team around being dominant in the post, and this is a team that pulls all that dominance out of the post. And Washington isn't that team. Like, they have Kepnang, who's not a shooter. They have a couple guys who are on the floor at all times who aren't shooters. And so you saw a return to what Michigan was doing earlier in the year in terms of 2-point defense. A similar situation with Penn State, because their center was 2 of 5 from 3, pulled Mara out of the paint, and they were able to get to 42%, which isn't 56, obviously. But Penn State is not very good. So it feels to me like they got to find some answers for teams that have 5 shooters on the floor. Now, the good news is not a lot of college basketball teams have 5 shooters on the floor at all times. But that is going to be something that they need to work on. And I have faith that they're going to figure some things out. They figured some things out with blitzing ball screens earlier in the year. But, yeah, to me, it wasn't an energy thing. It was just like, what do we do with this team?
Yeah, they from a strategic standpoint, those 2 games, I thought, really addressed what I call the Mara problem for other teams that they faced. I mean, how are you going to deal with him on the defensive end of the floor, because he is such a tremendous factor in this defense. Urich from Penn State pulled them out, hit a couple threes. He was able to put the ball on the deck and really do some things that way too. And then when you get to Wisconsin, I mean, their bigs are just knocking it. They are just, and so another team that can do it, Illinois. That was the team that jumped to mind for me. It's like, what are they going to do when they face Illinois off the Penn State game? not really expecting Wisconsin to be able to do what they did, and then you saw the on ball defense be suspect in that game. Once guys are out of the once you got bigs out of the paint, it was something that not is an issue, but I agree, Craig, and I wonder what you think of this. I agree that this is something that they're gonna have to be on the lookout for, because the other factor here, and I wonder if the two are tied. Man, the rebounding, the rebounding in that Penn State game was just Penn State went to work on them. There were actually a lot of offensive rebounds given up last night too. I don't know if that had to do in the Penn State game with just guys being pulled out of the post, or was it with long rebounds. But the coaches have also been talking about the rebounding for this team, saying that needs to improve as well.
Well, last night, the German guy for Washington is a brute. Hannes Steinbach, I think, had 14 rebounds in 25 or 26 minutes last night. And I have a hunch that guy's going to do it against just about everyone. I mean, he is relentless on the offensive board. So there's a bit of that. Michigan did change their defense quite a bit between the Wisconsin game and the Washington game. Now, whether that change made sense or not, I don't know, but it worked. In the Wisconsin game, they were doing a lot of drop. In last night, they were not. They hedged. They soft hedged out on the perimeter, which helped Washington get to the rack every now and then. But Washington ended up shooting 9 of 28 or something like that. I think that's the number from three. There's always a question for me is how much 3-point shooting is random. I think this is something Brian has spoken to in the past, and also something Ken Pomeroy has spoken to, where he said, he thought, and I haven't looked at this lately, he thought this 3-point shooting stuff is mostly what the offense does and not what the defense does. And that making threes, whether you're checked or not checked, may not be that profoundly different. And so I need to spend some time looking at the data on that. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So there are NBA studies that do prove the efficacy of closeouts. So if you have a defender within a foot of you, it's not much, but it is a lower proposition than if you have a defender 8 feet from you. So it is a meaningful thing, a closeout. That's a real effective defensive strategy. Ken Pomeroy has looked at 3-point defense in the first half and back half of conference seasons, and there's almost no correlation between those two things. So while it is true that sort of overall you have teams get unlucky and lucky at 3-point defense, it is also true that the kind of shots that Wisconsin was getting up against Michigan were better 3-point shots than you want to give up, even to a guy who hasn't been shooting very well this year.
Well, I have to relook at that tape. I unfortunately did not see the game live. I did go through it quickly. And it seemed to me the shots that Wisconsin missed were wide open. And the one that they made that was wide open was a brick.
Do you mean Washington?
No, Wisconsin.
No, okay.
Wisconsin's wide open threes, they missed, with one exception, which was a brick. And the ones they were checked on or were 3 feet beyond the line, and it's hard to check big guys 3 feet beyond the line, they made. And I want to go back and maybe I'll prove myself wrong on that. But to me, this Wisconsin is a good 3-point shooting team. They've not been great this year. They just came out and shot it. Now, Dusty was I was at the presser on Monday, was quite frustrated with it and didn't quite a lot like Painter perhaps in the past, and was quite frustrated by, what do I do about this? Well, he did something, because if you look at the game last night, they were not dropping.
Yeah, it was particularly noticeable with the die, and I didn't think that he seemed out of sorts. He seemed to be at a soft hedge and recover pretty well.
I do too. I thought he did fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the numbers say on those particular instances. So I'm sure someone will break down statistically what that looked like. But just the eyeball test, it's like that. I don't think that that's a non-starter of a strategy. He doesn't just have to be a drop guy. In terms of your ball screen coverage with a die Mara. I'm curious what you think, Seth Fisher.
Yeah, man, he was. And the fact is, he doesn't have to come off his feet in order to play that, which makes a big difference as a center, right? As long as you can just put your arm up, you can cover guards if you want to, because they go around you, and all of a sudden the hand is still in the way. And Washington is weird because they're a 2-point jumper team, right? They like to take those little floaters all the time, and he was really affecting those. So Washington, that was the difference between the Washington game and the Wisconsin game. I thought was Wisconsin is, they need to get to the rim. And they were 56% on twos because they were getting to the rim, and that was a problem because they were, getting us spread out. Washington doesn't really play that way. They're not a 5-out team. They're going to take those short little 2 jumpers. And eventually, you're just going to get killed in shot quality if you play that way against Michigan. So they can get away with that. You can have Mara guard in man because he's just going to take that 2 away, unless he's got a guard, some Lithuanian 7-footer on the outside who's going to be shooting 5 of 10 from 3, and that's still a problem. I don't know if we've solved. Like you said, Illinois is going to be a problem. These European shooting bigs are just going to be an issue all year, and it's not hard to see that coming. We said that Michigan likes to get in transition because they're big and they're fast, and that's really hard to defend. Right? That's who Michigan is, just like Florida last year. Well, who did Florida lose to last year? They lost to teams that could just slow the game down and play 5 out and just have good 3-point shooting. At that point, it's luck. That's when it's luck, right? Is that guy going to get 5 of 10, or is he going to go 2 for 10? And you can't control that, and they can't really control that either.
I mean, but they shot 56% from 2. Like, it's not Michigan didn't lose to Wisconsin because of luck. Like, yeah, they hit some threes that they shouldn't have hit, like, overall. But that game was alert for Michigan. They got to figure some things out against teams like Wisconsin. It's going to be a problem for them if it happens again, because you have, and I do think that the hedging against Washington was a response to that. Because that's something that you can do against teams that go 5 out that want to screen to disrupt their offensive flow. And even though Washington isn't one of those teams, I think we've seen Dusty May do things against teams that it's not going to be very effective against, or you don't need to do it against, because he wants to try something out. Like, and there's a couple of things that, like, Michigan needs to, like, take a minute before they try transition pretty much every time, right? Because, like, at this point, a third of their turnovers are bad idea transition takes, and I know they want to go fast, but there's a point at which, like, they've got 5 guys back, and you're like, well, maybe we won't do transition this time. But we see them try to press, we see them pop into zone from time to time, and against these teams are not. A lot of them are not threats to Michigan, but what we do see is we see Michigan practicing live ball editions of basketball tactics that might not make sense against the team they're actually playing. And these things often come against after they've had sort of a weakness exposed. And so for me, the hedging is a response to Wisconsin, despite the fact that Washington is not Wisconsin. And I think it's a good idea. Like, you saw, Mara's length is able to dissuade passes really well. So I do think it's an interesting development that they can use him in ways that aren't drop coverage, because he's agile enough and he's huge. So any pass that gets by Mara is basically going to hit a satellite before it gets to a defender. So you're going to be able to recover on those instances. So I think it's a good development. I think Michigan's going to need it against teams like Wisconsin.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's a really good point that it wasn't necessarily an ideal defensive tactic last night, but it sure worked, I thought. And it is something that you practice for future games against, for example, Illinois, when one of the 7 Ivasiches steps out to because I think they got about 7 Ivasiches on that team who will step out and hit a three. So Illinois is good. Incidentally, I watched Nebraska. Nebraska is another team that has a guy, Rink Mast, who I think is about 6'10 or 6'11, who can step out and shoot the three very well.
He can.
Nebraska also has Sanford, who's not short. He's not that tall. He's about 6'7", and he's a phenomenal shooter. That team can shoot the ball. And the point guard at Nebraska, Hoiberg, was that the same Hoiberg that was at Michigan State? Or is this another son? I don't know, but he's pretty damn good. So
he's not. He's he exists. He doesn't take a lot of shots.
He's a good basketball player. He understands the game. He gets them into an offense. He can make shots if you lay off him. He did the game they played this week. That team I just assumed was just they were playing meatballs, and I've now changed my mind on that. I think that's a really, really good basketball team. And so the Big Ten is a lot stronger than I would have imagined, I think, at the beginning of the year. One other thing, if I could, Sam, is that the best referee I saw in the last 2 or 3 games, Amy Bonner. Amy Bonner last night called a really, really good game. And compared to the 3 jugheads who called the Michigan-Wisconsin game who were clueless, she had a better feel for the game than anyone I've seen in a while. So my take is more women referees.
So do you guys think was that basket interference on a diet in that game?
I mean, it was. It was a right call. It was close.
Technically it is. I feel like the rule is, I don't like the rule because that ball's coming off, Yeah. Like it feels like once the shot is definitively not going in, it should be fair game. And part of it is over the rim, but the ball's clearly coming off. By the rule, it's offensive goaltending. Yeah. But, it feels like it would be a just thing for that to be a putback. So I'd like them to change the rule, but by the rule, it's the right call.
I asked Dusty that on Monday at the end of the press conference. I said, "Look, would you like to get rid of that rule?" And he said, "Absolutely. It's an idiotic rule. It makes no sense. They play it differently in Europe and in international ball, which is in
international ball, as soon as it hits the rim, it's like fair game for either team,
mm-hmm.
which seems to go a little far to me. But for me, like as soon as the ball has no chance of going in the basket, I feel like it should be fair game for either team.
Yeah, it shouldn't have been basket interference, but under the rules it was. So
I'm curious. One more basketball question before we get out of here. I think the coach is talking about energy this week. That's a fleeting thing. They didn't match the energy in a couple of games. That hasn't been an issue for them. But they have been talking about needing to be a better rebounding team for a few weeks now, which seems a little. It's like Michigan by the numbers and certainly by the eyeball test, you would expect that wouldn't be something that they were talking about. But then you look up in some of these recent games, you see you have some teams that are really hitting the offensive glass on them effectively. And I'm curious what you guys make of that. What do you think is the cause? Are they just not boxing out enough? Are they not physical enough? Or are these matchup specific things that have led to some of the rebounding success that other teams have had?
Well, I think part of it is the transition. So Michigan really wants to get out in transition. So what often happens is you have a guard leak out and he's not going to the boards, and that's probably part of it. But also, like, the bigs that they have are not focused on boxing out dangerous rebounders to the point that they need to be. And Mara is a guy who is thin, and you can push him around, and he's a guy who has tremendous size, but he's not thick. So I think that people can get good position on him, and there's nothing that you can do about that. But I do feel like if Tom Izzo was in charge of this team, they would be better at defensive rebounding. Now, I don't know if there are aspects of the team that they would be worse at, like seeming like human beings who you want to get a beer with. Doesn't matter. The issue is that Michigan is concentrating on lots of different things. They're concentrating on defensive switching and hedging and getting their offense together because it is a team that's coming together, and it doesn't feel like they've really focused on defensive rebounding. And this happened under Beeline, where I remember at some point, very deep into Beeline's tenure, like he hired a guy to be their defensive coordinator. I think you, Sam, told me that he told John Beeline that if they wanted to be better at defense, they had to practice it. And that turned out to be correct. So I feel like they're doing a lot of things in practice, but one thing that they're not doing is they're not doing all-out war drills about defensive rebounding. And maybe that's fine. And maybe defensive rebounding is going to be something that they're just not great at despite being huge. And that's going to be a trade-off that they make in exchange for being one of the best teams in the country. And I don't exactly know how that's going to play out, but I do feel like whatever your expectations are for Michigan's defensive rebounding, like one, they're in the top 100. They're 74th right now, so it's not a huge problem, but it also isn't where you'd want it to be. So I feel like it's going to be a weakness, and maybe Michigan is able to get around to fixing it later in the year, but it's clearly not a huge priority.
Yeah,
I mean, part of it is the way they play, right? So Mara's going to be chasing some guy and putting his hand up in the air. That kind of puts you out of position. So I think the plan was to have Yax and Rez kind of be the ones to clean that up because they'll be bigger than the guys around them. And that really worked against Washington for the most part. Like Rez was getting up and he was plucking those balls out of the air. The Big Ten is just a physical league, and they let you get away with a lot of that shoving in the back with your elbow. And if you go back and watch the Gonzaga game, they didn't have that problem as much because that got called a couple times early in the game, and then you can't do that. Well, Wisconsin's going to be underneath you when you go up for that rebound, and you have to clear out that space because otherwise you're going to be coming down on somebody. And I think it's just an adjustment they got to make. Perez seems to be making the adjustment. Mara's kind of put out of position from where he is, but he gets enough rebounds. I think he'll be fine. Like Brian said, though, if you have to make it your number one thing. But Michigan has other things that they're really, really good at, and I'd rather them be the best 2-point defense and 2-point offense in the country.
Yeah, so we need to get to a break because I got to chew on this in the break and come back on the other side. So was Michigan the victim of a cheap shot or were a victim of circumstance? We're going back to the last Friday's hockey game. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cheap shot or victim of circumstance? Johnny Bacon says it wasn't a cheap shot. I'm curious what you guys think. We'll get to that. Talk a little Michigan hockey on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK line at big1050.com.
Clear on the radio.
All righty. So several questions. So people were asking about Andrew Marsh. They are just making sure the details of the contract match up with what they were saying in negotiation. All the deliverables are in. It's just contract review, intense contract review. But I am told, is everything's fine. I don't think he would have been helping recruit as much as he did if everything wasn't fine. But just pouring over the specifics of the contract is what is the deal there.
Well, he brought in some guys he likes, right? That he's friends with, isn't that so?
He was all over Jamie French, for sure. So now the ones that are that you got to wait to see, it's looking good with Trey Pierce. It's looking good with Cam Brandt. Looking good with Shamari Earls. But you gotta finalize those things. And I had given up when I heard some of the numbers being thrown at him, but they figured out a way to make that more in question. So I'm there's some confidence within that they can get back. So
now they have a kid coming in named Christian Pierce,
his brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would seem to indicate that would be positive, I assume.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the numbers being thrown at defensive tackles, and this is not to denigrate or disparage them in any way, but it's unreal. I mean, just way more. It just shows you how much these contracts have gone up in the last couple of years because they're making like twice as much. They're going to get like twice as much as Mason and KG got. That's where the numbers are now. Just crazy. And there's no.
Well, they didn't have the house settlement stuff behind them.
Yeah,
It's true.
right.
Mhm.
So,
They're
yeah.
still making a smaller percentage than any pro league, by the way, of like what as far as the money that comes in versus what goes to the players. It's like half.
So, setting the stage for the hockey discussion. How are you guys feeling about this team heading into the season compared to how you started feeling as things unfolded? Because I saw after that cheap shot or not cheap shot, which we'll get to on the other side, I saw people, oh my God, I thought this is a national championship team. Now look at us. Did you guys feel like this is a national championship team heading into the year? And were you feeling like it as the season unfolded?
I mean, there's no such thing as a national championship team in hockey.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, there's a playoff team.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
it's all random. I mean, there's so much randomness in one game events that it's not like something you can predict. Now, maybe if Michigan was the
Caliber team.
yeah, I mean, if Michigan had Cale McCarr and and the Avalanche lineup, you might be able to predict it.
Yeah, I
But,
guess the more succinct way to ask the question is, how good are they relative to your expectations? Was this what you expected heading into the year?
Back in about
I mean,
20.
I don't like. They had a lot of depth. They had some good top end guys. I didn't really know exactly what to expect. I thought they'd
All right, guys,
be a
coming back
tournament.
on the air in 5, 4, 3.
We are back right here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Wine, travel on the other side. Before we get back to the roundtable, want to tell those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle, you know what to do. Get on board with Brighton Ford. Go to brightonford.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD or make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. You ready to take the wheel of your dream Ford at Brighton Ford? It's more than buying a car. It's a true experience. And now through February 2nd, qualified lessees can lease a 2025 Ford Escape for as low as $256 a month with only $3,500 down. That's plus first payment, taxes, doc fee, title, license, and state fees. Due to signing, security deposit waive, 7,500 miles per year for 36 months. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD or see dealer for full details. So make your next move easy with Brighton Ford. No hassle, no stress. One of their expert techs can roll right up to your home or office for routine maintenance on site and on your schedule. So why wait? Call 1-800-NEW-FORD now and get on board with Brighton Ford the easy way. All right, so Brian Cook, cheap shot or not? Michigan's goaltender last week.
I don't know. So the actual act itself didn't look too bad, but Naruto said in the press conference that they had something in their scout about an incident from the same guy that happened earlier in the year against Robert Morris. So you never know. I do think that it was an appalling job by the officials trying to control that, and one of those officials has a very long track record of ignoring severe events happening against Michigan players. So he was the guy who was there when Rucker McGroarty got boarded and missed half a season. Like, he's
Jackson
appalling.
Hallam.
Yeah, knee hit on Jackson Hallam, no penalty. Like, and we're talking about protecting the players, but it seems like every Michigan injury goes completely unpunished. Now, a couple Notre Dame players did get suspended for one game after, but it wasn't for that incident. It was for repeatedly cross-checking Michael Hage at the end of a game where Michigan was on the power play and up 3 goals. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, this conference doesn't care about hockey. It's disgusting. Like, you have the best teams in the country. Michigan is playing in the best league that's not the NHL or AHL, probably in the world. And none of these games are on television. You have 1 versus 3 that's on BTN minus, which is an appalling product. Like, the camera isn't pointed at the puck, and you don't have professional announcers, And I think that shows up in the officiating, where these guys just aren't up for it. And particularly this Jake Rikucki guy, I don't even know what his first name is. I don't care. If I was as bad at my job as Rikucki is at his job, I would be speaking a different language right now, guys. So it's a pattern. And that's the problem for me, is it's a pattern. Is that Michigan players get injured over and over and again because of on-ice incidents that should be penalized and they're not penalized. And then they want to tell us that they're sending Michigan players to the locker room for 5-minute majors because they want to protect the players. Well, do we want to protect all the players or just the players that don't play for Michigan? I don't know.
Cheap shot or not, Seth Fisher?
Man, like, you can see that he leaves his leg out a little bit. I would not have, he doesn't run a goalie like the way you normally run a goalie, right? Like when you play and someone's trying to go after your goalie, they go head first. And I think that it's an injury because he's just not looking at it. I think he's out of the circle and he's already trying to watch the play on the other side and just didn't see it. If Notre Dame didn't have this reputation, I would have been defending him. I would have said that doesn't look like it. The thing is, Notre Dame has this reputation, and they've earned this reputation over a long time. They had this reputation in this game. They were playing really chippy not just chippy. They were going way over the line in the first game in this series. You could tell in the first 5 minutes of the series that they could not skate with Michigan. You could tell Michigan wasn't taking them seriously. Their defense got really sloppy. And it turned into one of those, we're goons because we can't play hockey games. And when that happens, like Brian said, the officials have to step in and watch what's happening with the players. Anyone who watches hockey knew what was going to happen when Notre Dame fell behind Michigan in this series. You could tell Notre Dame is that kind of team this year, and they want to play that way. And when they start getting behind, they're going to go after players. And that to come out of that situation with Michigan on the penalty kill is just insane. They just lost the best goalie in college hockey, and they're defending their guy against a goon squad. And you decide to put Notre Dame on the power play. That just amps it up. And you got to know hockey players, and you got to know this game. And how are you a referee in the Big Ten, and you don't know the most basic things about the game of hockey? You're not allowed to fight in this league. The NCAA says you can't fight. You can't go and defend your own team, which is the way that these things used to be handled outside of the officiating. So then it has to be up to the officials. And you've got to call a hockey game. You've got to know what the game is. It is so frustrating to watch the same crew, the same guys, screw this up in such a way that the players are getting hurt again and again. And yet they give out 5-minute majors like candy for nothing. But they don't care when players actually get hurt. It's ridiculous. How do you not know the game?
Craig Ross, what do you think?
Well, I am no hockey expert. However, I have friends who are. I have a very good friend who's a lawyer up north. He's a football coach, successful football coach, successful trial attorney, and he's an ex-Michigan hockey player. And so I asked him about this. And his first response was the biggest mistake that's going on in college hockey is not allowing fighting. He said if you allowed some level of fighting, a lot of the sort of pressure would be taken out of the game, and it would be a safer game for players. And Alex in his really excellent Alex Drain in his really excellent article this week on Brian and Seth's site, wrote exactly the same thing. And so I think there's a problem there. Does Tony Petitti in the Big Ten care about hockey? No. Does Tony Petitti in the Big Ten care about safety? As Brian says, they sure as hell don't care about the safety of Michigan players. And incidentally, it was Notre Dame who took out Henry Muse, perhaps coming into the season as our number one defenseman, and he's gone for the year. So we lost perhaps our best defenseman, and now we lose our goaltender on a team that could have won the national championship. Whether they can now, have absolutely, no idea. The other thing is, my friend who is the ex-Michigan player said that it was, even though he went down inadvertently, the guy made no effort whatsoever to avoid the goalie. Looks to me like he's happy to plow into him. Not saying he was trying to hurt him, not at all. But I do think that he fell and he thought this was a good opportunity to slam into the goal. He made no effort to avoid him. So I'll say that. Was it a dirty play? I don't know. But I think the main point is, in college hockey, if the players can't police the game, then the refs are going to be inept at it.
Yeah, you have some co-signers to that. So let me, if I understand you right, you're saying that fighting should be allowed in college hockey.
Yes, some element, yeah. I mean, they let it in the NFL NHL, and I haven't thought this, but my friend who's a hockey player, and Alex and his brother, who's also a hockey player, who was here watching the games last night, Aiden, all feel like that the game is safer if there's some fighting allowed in the game.
All right, so you framed the next question really appropriately, Craig. So now, fellas, I mean, you just said lost the best goaltender in college hockey. That is obviously Hugh Buchanan's team. Do they have enough to still be a playoff team like we were talking about?
Well, I mean, they're currently they revised the pairwise and they replaced it with something called the NPI, which is pretty similar. Michigan's number 1 in that right now, and there's not a whole lot of season left for them to like totally blow it. So they'll be in the tournament. And also, Naruto did not say that he was out for the year.
Right.
He said that specifically he was not out for the year. So if they can get him back by the time the conference tournament rolls around, get him, in the game a little bit, I think that there's a chance that you see him playing in the NCAA tournament. And Stephen Peck's a guy who's not just a walk-on, right? He played a bunch of USHL games. He had a 905 last year in the USHL, which is actually upper tier in that league. Now, he played for a very good team in Muskegon, so it's not just like he's not Ivan Kovic. That's not real, but he's also not a total zero. He's a guy who Michigan was recruiting as a guy who could start here, and ideally it would have been later in his career, but he's the guy now, and like they're going to be a good team, and they're going to continue doing what they've done. I think it might be a difficult proposition for them to win the league now because Wisconsin is very, very good. They were super impressive when they came to Yost early in the year, and they've continued to do that. Michigan State's also pretty good, although they lost to Ohio State last weekend. Like I do think that Michigan will be in the tournament. They will have their crack at the national championship. This is a big blow for their hopes for winning the Big Ten. It's a big blow for their hopes of winning the Big Ten tournament. And it's disappointing, especially because their number 1 defenseman is out for the 2nd consecutive year, and they just can't get through a season without having some pretty serious injuries, and that's unfortunate. But despite that, they are a very good team. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of good players. They have Jaden Perron. I have no idea how he didn't score a point per game at North Dakota of all places, but I love him. He's fantastic. And like they're going to be in the tournament. They're going to be one of the best teams in the country. But if Ivan Kovic doesn't get back, it's kind of one of those things where every goal in the tournament, you're going to be like, well, would Kovy have saved that? And that's very frustrating.
And that's going to do it for us, folks. Hope you enjoyed the roundtable. We have got to get out of here, though. So we'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA online, the Big 1050.